Psychological Effects of Imprisonment by Cordell, Nala, Jerry, Angela, Anton, and Ryan. Why are prisons a thing? Prisons are facilities that can be used for retribution, deterrence, rehabilitation. People who are taken to prison are forced into completely new environments and are stripped of their rights in a matter of hours. This can also affect their emotions and their family lives. Going to prison is a huge life change. You are forced into a new environment with many different social dynamics under one roof. Here are some statistics that we found showing how many people affected by this topic. As you can see, there are lots of individuals affected by this every day in America. A huge life change. Going to prison is a huge life change. You are forced into a new environment with many different social dynamics under one roof. When someone is placed in a new environment, they typically start to try to put on a front in order to protect themselves and their emotions. This is called defense mechanism. A new person who is placed in a prison may be facing overwhelming emotions, new routine, different hierarchy, and new people, such as prison guards are always going to be above you, and wardens. Those people are going to be above you when you're in prison, and it makes you feel belittled as a person. This is life-changing to people. Also, traumas are a very huge part of this life change. When you are in a prison, you are confined in a 6 by 6 foot cell, if you're lucky, and you share that with at least 4 other people in there with you. That is a huge life change from going to your personal space to no personal space at all, no privacy. Also, a huge life change is considering your new routines. You are told when to eat, to sleep, to drink, to work, to go to the bathroom, to clean up yourselves. That is everything you are told to do that a normal person is not told to do on their daily routine. This is also how the defense mechanism comes into play. They are unconscious responses and try to protect you. Coping. Being imprisoned can affect a person and their families in many ways that are very emotional. In their new environments, inmates can try to cope, which is a way of dealing with something that is difficult. Hostility refers to any form of emotionally charged aggressive behavior, such as getting into fights, using drugs, self-harm, joining a gang, and becoming religious. These are all things that inmates do to try and protect themselves. Joining a gang, that is when people are scared to say no to a gang. They don't want to be alone, so they think it's safer to join groups and conform. Some of these traumatic experiences can also be represented by an inmate trying to protect themselves and conform. They try to protect themselves so they are not looked as just one person, they're looked as a group. So it's more easier to get by in jail with a group than it is just being alone. Also, becoming religious is a major part of jail. People are often found reading the Bible more, trying to find another spiritual connection that they possibly can with on the outside. Also, using drugs. Drugs are very high in prisons. People think that you cannot get drugs in prisons, but we have found there are more than half of the people using in prisons. This is a very concern because when they get out, they're automatically addicted to the drug that they had been using in prison. This is even harder for inmates and harder for people when they get out.
All right, so coping continued. Prisoners, for the most part, are in a new, dangerous environment and culture and have to adapt in the face of adversity. This process is called resilience. So if an inmate's thrown into a dangerous environment, they're by themselves. They don't know about anybody in the system, so a lot of things are going through their heads. So having this trait can really help them get on their feet and make sure that they survive in this environment. And it's called resilience. So some also can manage their time better if they know that they'll be released soon. That's probably easier on their mind, knowing that there's a way out and there's light at the end of the tunnel. And this is an interest and a long-term goal, and is known as grit. And that's just getting through it. So depending on how much time you have, having that trait can help too. Okay, so social aspects in prison. In prison, many inmates are subject to a different social hierarchy than on the outside. Inside, prisoners have to deal with correctional officers and gangs. So correctional officers are a little bit different than the outside world because they're really hidden. So not a lot of things are mentioned on what goes on between the correctional officers and a prisoner's relationship in prison. So you really want to have people in your corner so you can have protection from these threats, such as correctional officers and gangs. So developing close relationships due to proximity is common. So cellmates can be physically closer to each other. On the other side, prisoners who don't have these relationships can deal with loneliness, which is a lack of satisfying these social interactions, and loneliness can lead to multiple health effects, such as mentally, such as depression. All right, so solitary confinement is defined as the isolation of a prisoner in a separate cell as a punishment. So when this happens, a prisoner is removed from the normal environment of the prison and is thrown into a small room by themselves with just a bed. And many accounts of solitary confinement highlight that it is used frequently in prison and that serves many purposes, including not only punishment, but also managerial goals and the protection of certain inmates. So oftentimes, if you're a threat to other inmates, you can be locked into solitary confinement just so you won't have that chance to be able to hurt somebody. And also managerial goals. So if your behavior isn't what the correctional officers like, they can throw you to solitary confinement because it's really a burden and nobody really wants to go there. So it can be used as a punishment as well, and manage certain behaviors that may be incorrect. And people who deal with this type of imprisonment also deal with effects from ambient and chronic stress and may develop major depressive disorders. So like I said in the other slide, loneliness can lead to not having social interactions. You can also be depressed. You need people in your life. Okay, so discrimination and racial disparity. Discrimination in the U.S. today, even outside of prisons, minorities are viewed as violent or dangerous within the media. So this could explain why there's varied incarceration rates between whites and non-whites. It says whites, 100,000 residents, 400 of them are incarcerated. Same thing, same number of residents, blacks, 2,200 are incarcerated. And for the same 100,000, 1,000 Hispanics are incarcerated. So as you can see, blacks almost 5 times more likely to be incarcerated than whites, and are about twice as likely to be incarcerated as Hispanics. And like I said, due to media portrayal, people are more likely to view minorities as threats in society. So police look towards minorities more frequent to pull them over or search them because they view them as more dangerous to society. So people also stereotype prisoners as bad people who deserve to be there. And honestly, that's not the case a lot of the times, because as Jerry mentioned earlier, about 76% of people in prison haven't been convicted of a crime. That's correct. So a lot of the times it's not bad people necessarily. They could have been wrongfully convicted. They could have been, ratted out. Multiple reasons to why somebody can be locked up and not necessarily have committed a crime or be a bad person. All right, so correctional officers. The prison system uses correctional officers or COs to watch over prisoners. It's common to find COs abusing their power over inmates. This is due to there's not really any control. I feel like a lot of the times the media and other citizens are the main reason why officers aren't allowed to abuse their power. So if you get a chance to be in a private room or in a environment where there really isn't any rules with the animalistic mentality, there's really a chance that they can abuse their power and get away with it. So a lot of examples of them abusing their power will be taking bribes from inmates to do certain things for other inmates or whatnot. Sexually abusing inmates, blackmailing inmates as well, so threatening to take away certain privileges if they don't act a certain way or do a certain task. The stress and trauma caused by these interactions and the overall environment can lead to phobic and anxiety disorders. So pretty much an extreme stressful situation has a negative impact on the mind and can affect how you react throughout life from that point on. And these are our sources. Thank you very much for listening to our presentation.